Hey, my name's Dan Smith, and not only am I captain of the Common Names Club, but I'm also the lead minister here at Momentum Church. And I just want to take a few minutes to kind of walk you through what a typical Sunday morning looks like at Momentum Garfield Heights, and that way you'll kind of know what to expect when you show up for the first time. Now, as crazy as it sounds, Momentum is a church for people who don't like church. And that just really means that we are unapologetically not your typical church, which I love, because I didn't grow up going to church very much, and so I didn't understand a lot of the jargon or the rules associated with church. And so all we're saying is you don't have to worry about that stuff here at Momentum, and we think you'll see that. Momentum meets at Maple Leaf School, and we absolutely love meeting here. It's located at 5764 Cherney Road in Garfield Heights, which is about halfway between I-480 and Rockside Road. So when you get to the school, you actually turn onto Maple Leaf Drive, and you go behind the building to the main parking lot and main doors, just as if you're going to vote or to see your kids or grandkids in a Christmas program. When you get there, you'll see all of our signage, and we'll have some friendly greeters outside ready to say hi to you, unless you come during a polar vortex, and then they'll be just inside the doors to greet you. Once you come in the main doors, you'll see some goodies and hot drinks and some information to your right, and then you'll see a sign that kind of points you to our main service on the left. So feel free to grab some coffee or snacks or whatever, and you can hang out and chat with people and meet some people if you want to, or you can just grab that stuff and head right into our main service. Or if you have little mini-me's, then you can go straight ahead to our Mo Kids area. And our Mo Kids volunteers will help you check your children into age-appropriate classrooms, ranging from birth to 5th grade. Now, if you want to, you totally are welcome to bring your kids into the Big People service, but Mo Kids is definitely more geared toward their ages and attention spans. As for middle school and high school students, we think they'll totally dig our main service. Our main service is about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long, and usually we kick it off with a familiar song from the radio that our band will play, like something pop or rock or hip hop. And then our band will lead us in some worship songs, and the lyrics will be up on the big screen so that you can sing along if you want to. You never know what's going to happen at Momentum on any given Sunday. There might be a guest sax player, there might be a painter, there might be an original comedy video that sets up the sermon. And then somebody, either myself or someone else from our teaching team, will get up and teach something right out of the Bible in plain English so that you can understand it. We also take communion every week, which we explain during the service, and we take up an offering. What we usually do is we pass around some Indians batting helmets or popcorn buckets that are for our offering. But if it's your first time, that part of the service isn't for you. You're not allowed to give. Your money is no good here. So what we'd love for you to do is to fill out the Connect card that's at the bottom of your program with your information, and that's the thing that you put in the offering buckets or the helmets. And we promise not to stalk you with that information or anything like that, but it helps us to follow up so that we can answer any of your questions or provide you with any of the information that you need. And every Sunday after the main service, we actually have a little newcomer reception called Starting Point. So we'll give you directions on how to get to that, and we just tell you a little bit about who we are as a church and what we do in the community and that kind of thing. So after the service, you can go and meet the freaks in person. And as far as rules go, we only have 3 rules at Momentum Garfield Heights. No perfect people allowed, no one stands alone, and no making out in the back row. Hope to see you this Sunday.
Tell me what I've gotta do. There's no getting through to you. The lights are on, but nobody's home. You say I can't understand, but you're not giving me a chance. When you leave me, where do you go? All the walls that you keep building, all this time that I spent chasing, all the ways that I keep losing you. And the truth is, you turn into someone else. You keep running like the sky is falling. I can whisper, I can yell, but I know, yeah, I know, yeah, I know, I'm just talking to myself. Ooh, talking to myself. Ooh.
We are billions of beautiful hearts, and you sold us down the river too far. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever afters? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? About us? We are problems that want to be solved. We are children that need to be loved. We were willing, we came when you called. But man, you fooled us, enough is enough. Oh, what about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? What about us? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? What about us? Sticks and stones, they may break these bones, but then I'll be ready. Are you ready? It's the start of us waking up. Come on. Are you ready? I'll be ready. I don't want control. I want to let go. 'Cause now it's time to let them know. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever afters? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? What about us? What about love? What about trust? What about us? What about us? What about us?
Good morning, Momentum. I'm Brandon Board from the Mo Group Uncommon.
And I'm Tina Omar from Not Your Father's Mo Group. Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Welcome to everyone here joining us at Maple Leaf Elementary in Garfield Heights and to our friends online at mochurch.tv. We're glad you're with us today.
We would love for everybody to check out our Facebook page and also, while they're on social media accounts, post the website, www.mochurch.tv. Invite your friends and family to join us right now. Also, while you're on there, use the hashtag MoMonsters because we're in a series, Momentum, I Believe in Monsters.
So we have lots of people that join us both online and in person every week. And one thing that we ask our new guests to do is to fill out a Connect card. If you're here at Maple Leaf Elementary, you got that in the program or on the program on the way in. If you're online, your host is going to give you a link for that. If you're filling out the paper one here at Maple Leaf, then you can just drop it in the offering buckets at the end of the service.
At Momentum, we want you to come as you are, so we want you to feel comfortable, whether you want to just stand, sit, rock out with the band, read the Bible, whatever you want to do to feel comfortable and feel you closer with God, that's what we want you to do. So right now, if you like, please stand and rock out with the band.
Hey, good morning, everybody. We're going to worship. Just means telling God how much He's worth to us. So sing out. If you don't know the words, if you'd rather listen, go ahead and do that. But the whole thing is we are all performing for God. This is all for Him. So God, I pray that you send your presence and take this as a gift for you. Here we go. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb. It was my tomb till I met you, and you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul, and your freedom is all that I know. The only you, Jesus, when I met you, you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, oh, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. I need a rescue, my sin is heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, and your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, it's when you call my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Oh, you call my name. There's no end to amazing grace. Take me in. Take me in with your arms spread wide. Take me in like an orphan child. Never let go, never leave my side. I am holding on to you. I am holding on to you. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am. Love like this. Love like this. Oh my God, to find I am overwhelmed by your joy divine. Love like this sets our hearts on fire. I am holding on to you. I am holding on to you. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am. Sing that again. I am. I am holding on to you. I am holding on to you. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am. This is my resurrection song. This is my hallelujah come. This is why it's to you I run. Sing that again with me. This is my resurrection song. This is my hallelujah come. This is why it's to you I run. There's no space that his love can reach. There's no place where we can find peace. There's no end to amazing grace. I am, sing it out. Holding on to you. I am holding on to you. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am holding on to you. I am holding on to you. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am holding on to you. I am holding on to you. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am. In the middle. In the middle of the storm, I'm holding on. I am. This song, it's a new song that we're going to sing here today. It's inspired by something that Paul said in the book of Philippians, Philippians 1:21. Paul's in prison when he's writing this letter that's in the Bible, and he's telling the church in Philippi, the Philippians, you know, here I am in prison in this bad time, but I'm stuck between two things. Like, to live is Christ, to live is to let Christ live through me and to reach as many people for Jesus as I can, even when I'm in chains. But to die is gain. And this song was inspired by that. And it's all about whether you're walking through the fire in a storm right now, or whether you're getting just being acclaimed and getting awards and all this stuff. That in either way, to live is Christ, and we're going to do that. And so that's what this song is inspired by. Let it be Jesus, the first name that I call. Let it be Jesus, live is Christ. To live is Christ. For me, to live is Christ. God, I breathe your name above everything. Let it be Jesus. Let it be Jesus. From the rising of the sun, let it be Jesus. When all is said and done, I'll never need another. I'll never need another. Jesus, there's no other for me. To live is Christ. For me, to live is Christ. God, I breathe your name above everything. Let it be Jesus. Let it be Jesus. Should I ever be abandoned? Should I ever be acclaimed? Should I ever be surrounded by the fire and the flames? There's a name I will remember. There's a name I will proclaim. Let it be Jesus. Let it be, oh Jesus. Sing it again. Let it be Jesus. For me, to live is Christ. Sing that with me. For me, to live is Christ. God, I breathe your name above everything. Let it be Jesus. Let it be Jesus. Let it be my Jesus. Will you pray with me? God, thank you that whether we're surrounded by fire, it seems, and just in a bad place, or God, feeling good about what's going on in our lives, that always let it be you, God, always, that we don't forget that it is you who comforts, it is you who provides, it is you who gives us courage, it is you who gives us talent, and it is you, the reason that we're here today, and we cannot thank you enough. God, to you be all glory and power. In your name I pray, amen. You can have a seat.
Deep in the internet, where nobody goes, there lives the Society of Castaway Trolls.
We are trolls, big black holes instead of souls.
Preying on the weekend dumb.
Just for fun.
Just for fun, we are trolls.
Online trolls, chaos is our only goal.
Chaos in complete control. We are the trolls.
It didn't always used to be this way.
We used to lurk by bridges, stopping all who dared come by.
The humans soon caught up to us and we were forced to hide.
But then we found a place to go.
A place to grow.
Call our home.
Anonymous, no rules are set.
They call this place the internet.
Instead of trolling one by one, it's millions at a time.
A stream of endless victims.
This much fun should be a crime. We are trolls. We are trolls.
Big black holes instead of souls.
Preying on the weekend just for fun. Just for fun. We are trolls. Online trolls.
Chaos is our only goal.
Chaos in complete control.
We are the trolls.
For example, say some random human is deceased.
To us it presents a perfect feast.
We troll their memorial Facebook page.
And ooh, delicious range.
But none can test the skill and wit.
Match the dark and soulish pit
Of one who rules our trollish ring.
our fearless leader, our troll king.
We are trolls. Big black holes instead of souls.
Preying on the weekend just for fun. Just for fun. We are trolls. Online trolls. Chaos is our only goal.
Chaos in complete control.
We are the trolls.
We are trolls. We are trolls. Big black holes instead of souls.
Preying on the weekend just for fun. Just for fun. We are trolls, online trolls. Chaos is our only goal. Chaos in complete control. We are trolls. We are trolls. We are the trolls.
You'll never guess where we found that. It was on the internet. It's on the internet. You can find some of the weirdest, stupidest things on the internet. Hey, go ahead and grab your Bibles and open up to Matthew chapter 12. If you don't have a Bible that you feel like you can read and understand, you can grab one from the end of the row, pass it down. Feel free to take that paperback Bible home and make it yours, especially if you don't have one at home that you feel like you can read and understand. We're going to be on page 792. All the page numbers you see on the screen will correspond to that paperback house Bible. My name is Curtis. I'm our Twinsburg, Macedonia campus minister. Super glad to be here hanging out with you guys this morning. If you're hanging out with us at mochurch.tv, super glad to have you here as well. Go ahead and open up another page in your web browser. Go to Bible Gateway and open to Matthew chapter 12. Now, today, we're closing out our I Believe in Monsters series where we take a look at some monsters and say, okay, what cool Jesus truths could we learn based on these monsters, based on the folk tales that are associated with these monsters. And today, we're looking at trolls. And my exposure to trolls have been, for the most part, significantly different than what we just saw there on that screen. In fact, I didn't even ever really think about trolls as monsters because I'm an 80s kid. And in the 80s, my first exposure to trolls were one of these guys right here. Anybody? Round of applause. You remember the Jewel Belly trolls? Yes? Yes? Okay. So if you're not familiar with it, this was a toy that was very popular. And what you would do, it's things only about like this big, is you would get this, and the premise behind this toy was someone would give you this, you'd hold the troll in your hand, and you'd make a wish, and you would rub the jewel on the belly of the troll, and if you did that, your wish would come true. It was very exciting. Very exciting. So if you're looking for a way to execute some wishes that you have, you can buy these on $2.56 on Amazon. Apparently they didn't work, but that was my first exposure to trolls. It's like that doesn't look at all like a monster there. For the past, I don't know, I'd say a year and a half, maybe closer to 2 years, my house has been just full of trolls because I have a 4-year-old and they've looked like this. Well, not that. So that would be weird. That's my daughter. My daughter looks like this. There we go. Poppy and Branch. Round of applause. Anybody? Poppy and Branch? Yes. Yes. So it's a movie that came out with DreamWorks, and trolls are the heroes. It's a movie about, these little trolls that love to sing and dance and hug and sing and dance and hug and sing and dance and hug and sing and dance. It's a movie quote for you. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Miss Joyce had me. So once again, it's like, well, this isn't really a monster. Why in the world would trolls be something that would pop up in our monster series? Now, for the rest of us, when we start talking about trolls, probably the first place that we go to is a folk tale that we would call the Three Billy Goats Gruff. And the premise of the story for the Three Billy Goats Gruff is once upon a time, there were 3 billy goats. And they lived and they had their own field, and as they ate the grass, eventually their lush green grass went away, but on a field across a bridge, there was some nice, big, thick, lush green grass, but they had to cross this bridge. And so one at a time, these 3 billy goats went, and as they would cross the bridge, a troll came out from under the bridge and did not want to let them get to the other side, wanted to keep them from where they were going. And so the troll threatened to eat the billy goat, and each billy goat said, no, hey, look, you don't want to eat me. My big brother's coming after me. You know, he's a lot bigger. He'll be a much better meal than I would be. Let me pass and eat him. And eventually, you know, that happens. The 3rd billy goat, the biggest brother, shows up, kicks the troll off the bridge. But that's more closely related to the idea of troll, but still not quite what we would think we'd cover in our monster series. And as we started talking about brainstorming together as a creative teaching team, what monsters are we going to talk about? You go and you Google a list of popular folklore monsters, and trolls consistently pops up in the top 10 and even the top 5 of monsters. And it was like, well, why? What is it about trolls? I mean, because with the exception of internet trolls, I can't really think of a monster. And so this really has been Poppy and Branch, the 3 billy goats gruff, is really our modern, like, Western take on this monster. The trolls originally were a little different, and they definitely weren't singing. Trolls originally pop up in Norse mythology, which is just fun that that's a thing, you know, Norse mythology. Same place we get Thor and kind of those stories. And it pops up with the northern Germanic people. And trolls specifically grew in popularity while Christianity was spreading throughout Scandinavia. And so there's a wide array of tales that began to be told specifically about trolls. Now, for the most part, they had a couple things in common, but there were a couple different things. For the most part, most trolls looked mostly human. We got a picture for you. They looked mostly human. I mean, that's mostly human, I guess. That's mostly human. The exception is with all trolls, the big kind of like signifying factor for them was they had a big nose. They had a big nose. But outside of that, and that they would look mostly human, there was a wide array of kind of characteristics that went along with them. Some were very big and very strong. Others were very small and weak, and they depended more on their magic spells. In some stories, trolls were extremely dumb. In other stories, trolls were extremely smart. It just kind of all depended on who and what was telling the story. In very few stories, trolls like to eat people, but that definitely was not the majority of them. And so of all the different things that could happen, the wide array that trolls covered, there were 2 things that every troll that I looked up and kind of did some research on, there were 2 things that was in common with every single troll. And the first was that trolls very intentionally kept themselves isolated from anyone who was not like them. Trolls only surrounded themselves with other trolls. And they specifically kept themselves away from anybody who was not troll, because the second thing that they had in common, all trolls hated people. All trolls hated people in particular, like they hated humans. Particularly, they hated Christians. And what I found as really interesting is in the mythology and like the fables and stuff that I looked up, the reason trolls hated Christians really had nothing to do with Jesus at all. The reason trolls hated Christians was because as Christians would come in and they would kind of begin to set up their cities, Christians would want to build a church building. And when they would build their church building, something that was a part of every church building was a bell tower, and they just could not stand the ringing of the stupid bell tower. That's what all the fables said. They just hated the bells being rung. And so what trolls would do is they would hide up in the hills, and at night, when everybody would go to bed as they started building a church building, the trolls would come out and they would take boulders and they would just start launching them from the hilltop in order to hit the building and knock the building down to keep them from being able to build a church building, in hopes that the Christians would just move on and not settle there. And so the big things that we had in common for the trolls is that trolls loved to think of ways to keep humans from accomplishing their goals. Much like the 3 billy goats gruff, they wanted to keep you from getting where you wanted to go. Trolls wanted to stop you from being successful. The best thing that I read, kind of reading about trolls specifically, the best thing that I read that summed it up the best was this. It says when it comes to trolls, that there's nothing that makes trolls overtly dangerous. There's nothing that makes them overtly dangerous to humans, but trolls are intentionally not helpful to humans. Bottom line, trolls just aren't helpful. They just want to get in the way. They just want to keep you from accomplishing your goals. They just want to insert themselves into a situation and just not be helpful. Now, the story we're looking at today is out of the Bible, and man, the Bible contains so many different stories where people kind of insert themselves in a situation and just intentionally are not helpful. They just try and keep people from getting better, and particularly the story we're looking at today is one that I think it's really true. Now, Jesus is the main character in this story, and there's a lot of really good stuff that Jesus teaches, and at the very end of it, Jesus drops this quick truth bomb, which I think we tend to just kind of gloss over because of some of the other things that he teaches about, tend to pull our focus. But today I want to highlight the very end of that. So take a look at this story. Here's what begins to happen. Matthew chapter 12, Jesus has been teaching. People are following him, and they're following around from city to city to city to city. And this is what happens. Matthew chapter 12, starting in verse 22, reads like this. Then they, the crowd, brought him, Jesus, a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute. All right, he can't see and he can't speak. And Jesus healed him so that he could both talk and see. Verse 23 says, all the people were astonished. And they said, could this man be the son of David? So here's what's going on. So a man's tormented by a demon, and it shows itself in a way that the man cannot speak and he can't see. And so this crowd that's been following Jesus, been listening intently to him, trying to understand, does he have like spiritual authority to teach? Like, is he like a godly man? They bring him this guy who can't see, can't speak, and Jesus heals him. Now, Jesus heals him. Now, what's really cool is people begin to connect the dots, because what is in part of the story that maybe we don't know is that the people that Jesus is teaching, this group of people, the Jews, they had been looking for a man that was going to be able to do this. For 700 years earlier, a prophet, a messenger of God named Isaiah, wrote, one of these days, God's going to send you a king. God's going to send you this guy, and I want you to be looking for him. And the way you're going to know that this is the guy you should be looking for is he's going to heal blind people. He's going to heal deaf people. In fact, check it out. Isaiah 35:5 says this, written 700 years before this happened. He says, then the eyes of the blind will be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. In the very next verse, verse 6, he says the lame, people who can't walk, he's going to make it so they can leap. People who can't speak, mute people, they're going to sing. They can't speak, but Jesus is going to make it so that they can sing. And so he's kind of like they're calling a shot. Like Isaiah is saying, hey, look, you're going to be looking for this guy. This is how you're going to know this is the guy. Blind are going to be able to see. People who can't speak are going to be able to speak. And so the crowd begins connecting the dots, and they go, is this the guy? That's why they ask, is this the son of David? For us, that just seems like a biological question, right? Like, is this part of David's family? But for them, it's a question of authority. It's a question of power, of is this the guy we should be looking for? And they begin to connect the dots, and so they begin to follow Jesus. People catch on. This is the guy who we should be looking for. And so they begin to follow him. Now, here's where the rub comes in, and here's where the trolls enter the story. Because the people begin following Jesus, and the religious leader, a group known as the Pharisees, begin to see the power trickle out of their hands. They begin to see their power disappear, their influence over the people by this guy named Jesus. And so they insert themselves into the story here to intentionally not be helpful, just like trolls. So watch what happens in verse 24. So when the Pharisees, the religious leaders, but when the Pharisees heard this, they said, it's only by Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons. Verse 25. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every household, or in every city or household divided against itself will not stand. So in verse 24, he says, when the Pharisees heard this, It says they inserted themselves and they said, well, it's only by Beelzebul. It's only by the prince of demons that he's able to do this. And it seems a little extreme, right? Accusing that of Jesus seems a little bit extreme. But Jesus' intent is to confirm this, like, I'm the guy that you should be looking for. You should follow me. And the people begin to connect those dots, so they start to follow Jesus. And the Pharisees feel the need to insert themselves, and they step in, and they kind of spout off at the mouth, and intentionally are not helpful. And one of the key things that I think we can learn from this story is the way that Jesus responds. So it says that Jesus said he knew their thoughts. He knew their thoughts, and he said, every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined. Every city or household divided against itself will not stand. And I think about this every time I'm driving around town and I see a Cleveland Browns flag hanging outside and a Pittsburgh Steelers flag hanging out, like on the same house. And it's like, how does that work, you know? Like that's not going to be okay on some Sundays, you know? Like that's not always going to fly. And so Jesus kind of uses logic to point out their flaw. He says, guys, it makes no sense. If it's really only by the prince, if it's really only because I'm in cohorts with Satan, it doesn't make sense for me to drive out Satan. Eventually, I'm going to end up defeating myself. Like, why would I do that? So he points out the logical flaw in their argument, saying, guys, that doesn't make any sense. The other thing that I think is really interesting is look at how it starts. It says that Jesus knew their thoughts. He knew their thoughts, and so he said, and what that says to me is the Pharisees didn't have the guts to say it to Jesus' face. You know, so I picture there's like a crowd of people, and so I picture maybe the Pharisees are standing more towards the back. And when they see this awesome thing happen, where this guy who can't speak begins to speak, where a guy who can't see sees for the first time, I see them like starting to get jealous. And from the back of the crowd, they begin to whisper to the people that are around them, yeah, well, like, okay, sure, that looks cool and all, but it's only because he's in cohorts with Satan. It's only because he's really Satan. It's only because he's Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that he's able to do that. And you maybe begin to hear that gossip kind of spread through the crowd and intentionally become not helpful. All of a sudden, they're inserting themselves between them and following Jesus, and that's a big deal. That becomes a really big deal. Now, over the next few verses, Jesus highlights a very philosophical kind of explanation of why their logic is wrong on this. The kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. And it's good stuff, but we're going to save it for another message for another time, because that's a lot of times what is focused on in this story. But then in verse 30, Jesus says this, because he begins to shift his attention as to what he's talking about. In verse 30, he says this, whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Here is a big deal. All of a sudden now, Jesus begins to shift his attention from what the Pharisees are doing, and he begins to focus on specifically speaking about their words, the things that they say in the crowd, the things that the leaders said. And here, Jesus draws a line in the sand, and he says, look, here's the deal. You are either with me or you're against me. With Jesus, there is no middle ground on this. He says, look, you're either with me, you're either helping me, or you're hurting me. And he's specifically referring to their words. And he says, you're either helping to gather or you're helping to scatter. See, Jesus' number one goal was he wanted to help people love God. I mean, that was what his purpose was. That was what his intent was. And he goes on to later teach that the best way for us to do that is to help to love people. The best way to point them towards the God that loves them is to show them that we love them by loving it. And that's why Momentum's mission statement is Momentum moves people forward to love God, love people, and make disciples who make disciples. And so he highlights here, hey guys, here's the deal. You are either helping me bring people closer to God, or you are scattering them. You are either gathering them into me with your words, the things you say. You're either gathering or you're scattering. There is no middle ground. You are either helping or you are hurting. And it all comes back with him, in this case, to using their words. And in this case, the Pharisees, the religious leaders, were hurting. They weren't gathering, they were scattering. And so Jesus goes on in verses 31 through 35, and once again, he highlights something that we know. And he says, how do you know a tree? Well, you know a tree by its fruit. If a tree is good, it produces good fruit because it's got good stored up in it. A bad tree produces bad fruit because of the bad stored up in it. In the same way, that's what, like if we store bad up in us, well, it's only bad that's going to come out. If we store good up in us, then good is going to come out. And so then, in verse 36, at the end of this story, Jesus drops this truth bomb that I think is so incredibly important for us. It's so incredible. In fact, it's so incredibly important for us because we know this, and whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, whether you're a Christian or not, you know that things would be better if more of us would do ultimately what Jesus is driving us to do here at the end of chapter 12. Jesus says this to kind of sum up everything. He says, but I tell you that everyone will give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. Verse 37, for by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. Just all of a sudden drops this at the end of this thing, man, and this is so huge. Check this out. There's this really cool thing that happens in verse 36. He says, but I tell you that everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. Now, something really cool about this word right here, empty. Originally, this was written in Greek. That was the trade language of the day when this was originally written so that most people could read it. And this word that we translate empty is a Greek word that we would pronounce argon. And the literal definition of this word is you didn't do the work that was expected of you. Like, there's no weight. Like, the idea was it was just careless. You just spouted off at the mouth. You just started talking. You didn't do the research that was required before you started making statements. Man, like, that's a big deal. Like, you had an opinion and you just started talking before you ever did the work to find out if there was facts in this or not. Essentially, what this means is not helpful. You just started talking and it wasn't helpful. The bottom line, words matter. Man, and we know that. Every single one of us right now could, in an instant, probably list off a dozen times where someone just spouted off at the mouth at us. And it just wasn't helpful. In fact, it hurt. In fact, you could list it off so quickly because it hurt so bad that it is easy to remember. Or maybe they posted on social media, right? Maybe to rally their troops, and it just hurt. Or they felt for some reason that you were that person, that they were that person placed in your life to speak truth to you just in that moment, But it wasn't helpful. And you know it wasn't helpful. I believe that Jesus is giving us his spin on a proverb in the Bible. There's a book called Proverbs in the Bible, and it's a collection of really wise sayings from a king in their past. And it says this in Proverbs 15:28. It says, the heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes folly. I believe this is Jesus' spin where he drops that empty word statement there at verse 36. I believe that's Jesus' spin on this parable. And look at the picture that creates. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers. There's weight in their words. They've thought about what's about to be said. They've done the work that's necessary in order for them to be able to say what they're going to say next. But the mouth of the wicked just gushes evil. They just spout off. It just flows out of them. The mouth of the wicked gushes evil. Jesus drops this little truth bomb at the end of Matthew chapter 12, and I don't want us to miss this. Because I think ultimately what Jesus is driving us to is when it comes to our words, we've got to get to a point where we weigh them before we say them. We weigh them before we say them. You see, trolls just spout off. It's not helpful. And we're trolls when we just say things, when we're not helpful with our words. And so here's the thing. I know that I have troll-like tendencies. I know that we all have troll-like tendency, times where we don't put weight in our words, we don't put thought into them. Sometimes it's a careless word here or there. Sometimes we mean them to hurt. And we post things on social media, and bottom line, they're just not helpful. And so, I want to play a little game this morning that's going to need some audience participation. All right, you ready for this? Thanks. There we go. We're going to play helpful or not helpful. That's what we're going to do. We're going to play helpful or not helpful. And so I'm going to read to you some statements, and at the end, when I pause, I want you, if you think it's a helpful statement, I want you to cheer. Give me a yay. Ready? Yay. Nice. You sound enthused. And if it's not helpful, I want you to boo. Ready? Yeah, and I want like a deep guttural boo here. I want you to pretend I'm Ben Roethlisberger giving you the sermon this morning. There we go. There we go. Yeah, get off the stage. Yeah. All right, you ready? Helpful, not helpful. Here we go. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's helpful. Good job. All right, now listen to the, wow, that's awesome. I didn't expect you to ace that exam. Boo. Backhanded compliment. Not helpful. Not helpful. All right, you're so cool. Yeah, all right, now the rest of it. You're so cool. How are you still single? Boo. Not helpful. Not helpful right there, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I wish I could be as straightforward as you. Yeah, yay. I think that's a helpful statement. I wish I could be as straightforward as some people. I wish I could be as straightforward as you, but I try to get along with everyone. Boo. Once again, not helpful. Not helpful. And here's the thing. I'm sure every single one of us has said something along those lines. All right, maybe not those in particular, but we have a tendency to, try and deliver a compliment, but at the core of it is an insult, and it's just not helpful. And here's the thing, a lot of times, those aren't intended to be that way. And then the reason they pop up and the reason that they're not helpful is because there's a careless word here or there. There's a careless phrase, or there's a sentence we didn't quite think through, that we didn't put the work in. We left it empty. We didn't weigh our words before we say them. And here's the thing, several of us, many of us, can remember backhanded compliments that have been said to us, and what that tells me is that backhanded compliments that I've said to others, they remember them as well. And they're just not helpful. Now, sometimes they take a long time to get over. And so sometimes I think it's really difficult to always kind of peg what's helpful and what's not helpful, especially when you're in the moment. And so what I want to do for the rest of this morning is I want to share with you 4 questions that I think will help determine, is it helpful or is it not helpful? And so we're getting ready to put a bunch of stuff up on the screen. So I want you to pull out your phones. I want you to snap pictures of these. I want you to jot down some notes on your phone because I really think, man, this is so incredibly important for so many of the conversations that we're having right now as a culture, and we've got to be the difference. We have to be the difference because no one else is going to do this. And so we've got to find a way to be helpful with our words instead of being a troll. And so the first question is, am I the right person? Am I the right person? Am I the right person to say this? Am I the right person to deliver this news? Am I the right person to deliver this truth that maybe I think someone needs to hear? You know what? I've just been absolutely blown away by the amount of wisdom, the amount of focus that the book of Proverbs gives to how we choose our words. There's so much in there. This is not an exhaustive list of like wisdom that the Bible has to offer and how we put weight into our words, but I think some of these are like the core ones that are helpful. And so to help us ask this question, am I the right person? Proverbs 12:18, it says this, that the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Man, you get that? The words of the reckless, they pierce like swords. There's just no thought to them. Man, they just throw it out there. They're just slashing away. They cut like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Right? It definitely gives us like this picture of like surgical precision. There's thought, there's weight, there's behind your words. And definitely, there's a lot of times trolls will say, It's been my experience, especially like on the internet maybe, or even face-to-face, trolls will often say, well, I'm just speaking the truth. Like we're all thinking it. I'm just the only one who's got the guts to say it. Well, that's not always a good case either. There's a stand-up comedian. His name's Louis C.K. This is edited for Sunday morning purposes, just so you know. But he does a bit that I think fits really well here. He says, all of us, we have that friend who's always like, well, I'm just speaking the truth. And then finally, you've got that friend in your group who's willing to stand up to that friend and go, man, you're kind of being a jerk right now. And when they say to your friend, hey, you're kind of being a jerk right now, that jerk always responds, no, I'm not. And so you just want to tell your friend, I don't think you get a vote in this one, right? Like, I don't think your opinion counts on whether or not you think you're a jerk or not. You're kind of a jerk. No, I'm not. Oh, well, good. I'm so glad I asked because I thought for sure with the things you were saying that you were a jerk. And so Louis C.K., he goes on to say, man, if someone ever has the guts to come up to you and say, man, you're kind of being a jerk right now, our response should simply be, crap. All right, talk to me. Tell me how we got here. Because they're probably helping to save you from being a troll. Now, there's some things that kind of go along with this, but the ultimate question we need to ask is, am I the right person? Am I the right person to deliver this news? Because here's the deal. Even if you have truth, or even if there's just an ounce of truth in what you're about to say, if you're not the right person, if you don't have a relationship with them to where you can deliver this news, like it's not going to be heard. And it does no good. I mean, we can talk all day, but if you're not ever heard, that's not helpful. And then you're just being a troll. The second question is this the right time? Am I the right person? Is this the right time? Proverbs 15:23 says this, a person finds joy in giving an apt reply, and how good is a timely word. Another translation says, everyone enjoys a fitting reply. Next slide. Is the time. It is wonderful to say the right thing at the right time. Everyone enjoys a fitting reply. It's wonderful to say the right thing at the right time. Timing makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it? We don't have to tell us Cleveland fans that. Like, it's great that we won 22 games in a row this season, but the timing wasn't right. I know, it's like too soon. I'm sorry. Moment of silence. But see, here's the deal. It says an apt reply. Apt reply is not something that we say very often, but the idea is an appropriate response. An appropriate response. That's what makes this the right time. I want you to notice what this proverb does not say. This proverb does not say, you only say nice, kind, fluffy things to one another where we can all get along and just be happy and smile. It doesn't say that. It says you reply appropriately. Like in this case, a troll wouldn't care at all what time it was or whether the person was ready to hear what you had to say. They would just respond. And when they respond, they make their force known, mainly, usually, by trying to make you feel small. And so you might have something that needs to be said, but if it's not the right time, well then, it's not the right time. Once again, you can talk all day long, but if you say the right thing but you're never heard, it doesn't do you any good. Something I've learned from Dan, our lead minister, that I'm trying really hard to make sure to implement is this business principle, this business leadership principle of the idea of you praise publicly and you correct privately. And the idea is there have been times where Dan, like in his sermons or at leaders' meetings, will have this really kind, awesome things that he says, and I didn't know they were coming. And man, that goes such a long way at being encouraging. And I hope maybe some of you have experienced that with your boss or your spouse, or close friends, where they're just bragging on you in public. But there are also times where I haven't handled things the best, or Dan and I don't necessarily see things eye to eye. And to the best of my knowledge, we always talk about those things one-on-one with each other. And he leads with questions so we can get on the same page with each other as we talk it out. But see, trolls, much like the trolls in the folklore that would sit up on the hill and just start hurling stones, trolls don't care about the time. They just start throwing stones at people, and it's just not helpful. So the third question I want you to ask is this the right place? Am I the right person? Is this the right time? And is this the right place? I love this proverb, and you're going to see why in about half a second. Proverbs 10, verse 18 and 19 says this, hiding hatred makes you a liar, slandering others makes you a fool. You ready for this? Next verse. Too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. It's kind of hard to mess that one up, isn't it? Maybe it should say, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your fingers off the keyboard. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. Here's the deal, man. There's no shortage of trolls today. There's not. From politicians to celebrities to many of us, there are no shortage of trolls. It's so easy to spout off on a keyboard behind a screen about things that make us angry and should make us angry, and not remember that there should be weight that goes in our words. And we get so angry when we see others do this because we know in the back of our mind, and you just want to tell them, like, this isn't helping. But when it comes to us, when we get so angry, it's so easy for us to post a quick status to rally our troops, so to speak, and forget the weight that our words are supposed to have, the thought that's supposed to go into them. And once again, I'm not saying, got to go back to that last part, I'm not saying we only post nice, fluffy things that we agree with, that we can all agree on social media, because that same proverb in verse 18 says that hiding hatred makes you a liar. So what I am saying is that we need to start taking the time to ask the question, to give pause, to weigh our words. Is this helpful? Does this actually help in the conversation? Does this actually help the problem? If the answer is at all no, then I'd say we're just being a troll. Here's kind of like a quick side note. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're not a follower of Jesus, if you don't consider yourself a Christian, you don't have to listen to this. You can tune this out. But if you do say, you know what, I am a follower of Jesus, I am trying my best to be a Christian, we have to think through. You cannot get around this. We have to think through, could this post, could this statement, could this thing that I'm about to say be an empty word that gets in the way of someone following Jesus? We've got to start thinking through that. Once again, not saying to not talk about, to not post controversial things, but I'm saying think through, is this helpful, or am I just being a troll? Am I gathering people into Jesus, or am I just pushing them away? Am I gathering, or am I scattering? Because for Jesus, that's where the line in the sand was. Question number 4, am I in the right mind? Proverbs 29:22 says this, an angry person stirs up conflict, and a hot-tempered person commits many sins. Bottom line, man, we all get angry, and we should get angry. Jesus got angry on several occasions, but notice in this proverb, anger's not the problem, right? Anger's not the problem. The hot-tempered person is. The person who lashes out in anger, the person who responds in uncontrolled rage. That's what this proverb is pushing us to. Because when we react in rage, when we react in anger, is when we say things we regret, right? It's when we threaten the divorce. It's when we punish our kids too harshly. It's when we say things to our parents that one day we wish we could take back. It's when we post things just to get a rise out of people. Trolls are not helpful because they lash out in rage, because they don't take the time to weigh their words before they say them. Man, it's so much of what we are talking about right now in culture, in our society, on our news, with our friends, needs this. And here's the deal. So much of it is being talked about right now in anger. And I totally get it. I do. There are things that should make us angry. There's disrespect. There's a lack of empathy. There's distrust, mistrust, hurt feelings, and just plain injustice. And it makes me angry. But when we lash out in anger, we're not being helpful. We're gathering. We're trying to gather, not scatter. There's an old American folk tale about an old and a young man, and it goes like this. It says, once upon a time, an old man spread rumors that his young neighbor was a thief, and as a result, the young man was arrested. And several days later came his trial, and the trial proceedings went on, and at the end of the trial, the young man was actually proved to be innocent. And after having been released, he found that nobody wanted to do business with someone who was accused of being a thief. And so the young man decided to sue the old man for wrongly accusing him. And in court, the old man's argument to the judge as to why he should not be found guilty is the old man said, "Judge, they were just comments. They didn't really harm anybody." And so the judge passed the old man a piece of paper, and he said, "Before I pass sentence on this case," he told the old man, "What I want you to do is I want you to write down all the things you said about the young man on this piece of paper. And then I want you to cut them up, and on the way home tonight, I want you to throw them out. And tomorrow, you can come back and hear the sentence." And so the next day, the judge told the old man, when he come back, he says, "Before receiving the sentence this morning, I want you to go out and I want you to gather all the pieces of paper that you threw out yesterday when you left." And the old man, in kind of a rage and confused, he said, "I can't do that." He said, "The wind spread them and I won't know where to find them all." And the judge simply replied, "In the same way, simple comments may destroy the honor of a man to such an extent that one is not ever able to fix it." Trolls aren't helpful. Trolls aren't helpful. Our words have weight. Careless words here or there may seem careless to us, but carry huge burdens to people who overhear them. We've got to get to the point where Jesus, like he talks about here at the end of chapter 12, we've got to get to a point when it comes to our words that we're willing to weigh them before we say them. Let's pray. God, we love you. God, thank you for loving us. God, this is a difficult truth to get over, God, because I know that I've got a troll-like tendencies. I've got a tendency to just not be helpful, to want to spout off in anger and not weigh the words appropriately before I go and say them. So God, help me, help us. God, help me to remember that, God, my ultimate goal here is to gather people to you. That's my goal, to point people to Jesus. God, and I don't want to get in the way of that. I don't want to not be helpful. So God, help us to do that. Help us to keep that in mind. God, help us to be helpful with our words. God, we love you. It's in your Son's holy and awesome name we pray. Amen. Every week we take communion together here at Momentum. Communion's a time that I like to think of as like a big reset on my week. Whether it's been I've screwed something up by not choosing my words appropriately, or I've sinned in some other form. I like to think of communion as that time where I can be reminded that no matter what my story is, no matter how far I feel or felt from God, that God loved me enough to send his Son to die on the cross for my sins. And that's what we celebrate, and that's what we remember during communion. So what's going to happen in a couple moments, these trays are going to come down. And in the trays, in the center, there's a little cracker, which is meant to remind us of Jesus' body, and a little cup of grape juice, which is meant to remind us of Jesus' blood. And so when that tray comes to you, if you're a follower of Jesus, you can take that cracker and that juice, pass the tray on, spend a couple moments talking to God, and then you can take communion whenever you're ready. If you're not a follower of Jesus, I'd encourage you to let that tray pass and spend a couple moments thinking about, man, what's that next spiritual step that God's challenging me to take? What's that next spiritual step that I need to take this morning? What's holding me back from jumping all in to following Jesus? So let's do that as we take communion together right now.
Dear Lord, thank you for sending your son, Jesus Christ, as a living sacrifice for us. Amen. We've now come to the point of our service where you might be like, man, they're about to do it. They're about to ask us for money. But at Momentum, that's not what we're about. If this is your first time here, you want to make sure that you don't give any money. Just let the Connect card be what you put in the bucket. If you've been going to Momentum and you support what we do here, we want to say thank you. And we want to remind you there's 3 ways to give. One is in the bucket. Also, there's online giving. And then we have this text giving that we have this nice little video to show you.
Hey there, Justin here, and I wanted to show you one of the easiest ways for you to give to your church. All you gotta do, send a text message. Here, I'll show you how I set it up. All I need to do is text an amount to 84321, and a link will be sent back to me. I'll tap on that link, select my church, add an email address for the receipt, enter in my payment information, and that's it. From now on, when I want to give, I just grab my phone and text an amount. All right, let's donate $10 now. And that's it. Oh, I added an extra 0. Yeah, I'm gonna need to fix that. Luckily I can. Since it's been less than 30 minutes, I just send the word refund and that last donation will be refunded. Whew. I'm gonna try it again. And there we go. And that, my friends, is how you can give with a text message. Happy giving.
Just a couple options for you.
At Momentum, we love our Sunday mornings, but we also love our Mo groups. Mo groups meet during the week. It's a smaller group of people where you can talk through what we learned about Sunday morning. We can live life together. We can really support each other in our day-to-day lives. So if you're not involved in a Mo group, I encourage you to check one out this week. There's information about all of them out in the lobby. I lead Not Your Father's Mo group, and I encourage you to come Fridays at 7 p.m. in the Flats. We'd love to have you.
About 10 minutes after service, we have something called Starting Point. Starting Point is a newcomer's reception. It takes about 10 minutes, and it's about 10 minutes after service. So you get to meet the leaders of the Mo groups, as Tina said. Also, you get to meet Curtis, other leaders at the church. You just talk about your next steps in growing with God. So if you want to go to that, we ask you first pick up your kids. We have Mo kids, but after that, you turn right out here. Right where you got the coffee and donuts, it'll be a table set up, people waiting to talk to you. Again, it'll be about 10 minutes after service. Also, we have something called Mo 101. Mo 101 is a great opportunity. It's coming up on October 4th at Walton Hills Church. November 4th, Walton Hills Church, 4 to 8 p.m. Dinner and childcare will be provided for kids under 12. Again, you get to find out why we do what we do at Momentum, ask more questions about what's your next steps and things of that sort. If you have not been there at Mo 101, we encourage you to go. Also, it's the first step to becoming a team member at Momentum.
All right, so if you'll pray with me, we'll head out for the week. Dear God, thank you for this day and this time to come together to worship you, to learn more about you, and learn how to be more like you. God, I pray that this week we can remember these. We can encourage each other to not be trolls, that you can remind us and be that bug in our ear. God, I pray for our community that we can grow together and encourage each other and serve you well. In your name I pray, amen.
Have a great week.
Have a good week.
Not a yes sir, not a follower. Fit the box, fit the mold, have a seat in the foyer. Take a number. I was lightning before the thunder. Thunder, 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 feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, feel the thunder. Lightning and the thunder. Thunder, thunder, thunder. Kids were laughing in my classes while I was scheming for the masses. Who do you think you are? Dreaming about being a big star. They say you're basic, they say you're easy. You're always riding in the backseat. Now I'm smiling from the stage while you were clapping in the nosebleeds. Thunder, 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 thunder. thunder, lightning and the thunder, thunder. Thunder, feel the thunder, lightning and the thunder.